Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here to uncover inspiring strategies from successful Christian entrepreneurs as well as their stories. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing Jason Valchine, a former sales engineer with 2 decades of experience in flipping single family homes. Turned to real estate syndication after a significant career setback in 2016. He was driven by a deepening faith in Jesus Christ. Transitioning to multifamily real estate, he self-educated with insights from industry experts, leading to his first syndication deal, which was a 54-unit complex in Jackson, Michigan, where he took on roles as sole partner or general partner, asset manager, and project manager. Under his leadership, the property underwent a 2.3 million renovation, elevating it to one of the nicest communities in Jackson, Michigan. Valchine credits his success to his faith, stating that God's guidance is pivotal in life's journey. Now he's a full-time real estate investment professional and founder of Three Nails Capital and Valchine Investments, LLC. Jason enjoys spending time with his family, serving in his church, golfing, hunting, and painting cars in Chelsea, Michigan. Hey, Jason, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today.
Hey there, Francine. Honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'm excited to talk to you about our topic today because you came to me through a common friend, Gordon Smith, and he had you in such high regard that I didn't wait. I usually would wait to get to know the person and then send them a message, but I couldn't wait. Something told me just send him a message, and you accepted,
That's
which,
awesome.
knowing that you're such a busy guy, I was quite surprised. So, Jason, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become a Christian? Have you always been a Christian, or is that something that you became later on in life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was born and raised Catholic. A lot of people call them cradle Catholics.
Mhm.
But and I believe that I was saved when I was about 11 years old at a Baptist camp. A basketball coach at the time started asking me to go to youth group, and so started going to youth group, and he asked me to go to camp, and I believe that's where I was saved. In high school, I was kind of like, I was thinking about this earlier. It was just like a really kind of like a little bit, stronger of a faith, but really didn't have that solid relationship with Jesus. I was part of a youth group and I was a leader in the youth group, but just really didn't, Jesus didn't take hold of my heart. I went to college and I was lost. And I mean, like, lost. And I think a lot of college kids get lost in college. I mean, it has all the recipe for that. But I was really lost and got out of college and, just continued to be lost, floundered in the world. And, when you're lost in college, it's kind of, you have this little shelter, but you get lost in the world and it sometimes can be a pretty harsh place. So that was, a little bit of a wake up call. Lots of jobs, lots of girlfriends, and then met my current wife. And we got married, we started having kids, and we're looking at each other like, hey, should we go back to church? Like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And then we just went, and I'm not the Catholic Church is easy to pick on, but I'm not picking on them per se. It's just more like we went there, and these particular churches, like everyone was just checking a box. Like,
Right. It was at the Catholic Church
yeah,
that
and it just didn't
yeah.
seem like there was spiritual growth. So we started bouncing around. Fast forward, we moved to Chelsea, my hometown, about an hour away, and then had to start the process over. Found a little church in town, made a lot of friends, great church, leadership problems. Then, all our friends left. We're sitting around at church one day and we're like, where the heck did all our friends go? Like, we're like the only ones there. And so we started bouncing around to their churches, right? And just like church hopping. And it was one Sunday I was like, honey, and the kids were old enough to make their own decision at that point, they were like 9, 10 years old. And I'm like, guys, we can't just keep, hopping around in churches. We got to pick a church and like,
Yeah.
you know, so we settled on, we didn't settle. They voted, and I actually uphold my end of the bargain. I gave them a vote, and when they all voted for 242 Community Church in Ann Arbor, I was the only guy that didn't.
Uh-huh.
but I upheld my end of the bargain, and that's where we've gone ever since. And that's been about 5 or 6 years. But that's not really telling you my faith story. My faith story is about when we first moved to Chelsea. I had a job, a career. I was a sales guy, and really the best job I had ever had. Covered 11 states. Loved my boss, like doing great. And then uh, companies bought up an equity firm. They fired everybody. They fired like 47 people in 2 days, 2 weeks before Christmas. They didn't want. It turns out they didn't want our people. They just wanted our product and our factory.
What?
So for the first time in my career, I mean, we had just my wife, we just had our third kid. She quit her job. We got a big mortgage. You know how it is in America. You adjust your lifestyle to your job.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really the wrong way to do it, by the way. But that's the American way, and that's what I was doing at the time. So we had just gotten a big mortgage, and then I think what happened, looking back on it, is God just said, because everywhere before, God always helped me. Like within a day or two, I would have another job. But
Yeah.
this time was different, and this time I didn't have another job, and the phone wasn't ringing, and like I got scared and I got depressed, and for me, like that was the time I think God just said, you know what, I'm not going to help you this time. Like it's for your own good. I'm not going to help you. And so what it did was it brought me closer to Him, and my ego had gotten so big, and I'd become so worldly. God used that to pull me back in, right? And I just started gobbling it up. Like, I got closer to Christ. I got a relationship with Him finally at that point in my life, and it's continued since. But I think that the big thing is for most listeners is, this isn't just what happens on Sunday. Like for instance, if you marry your spouse and you only tell them I love you when the day you get married, like that's not going to work. So we all need reminders, right? And so that's why there not only has to be church on Sunday, but it has to be all week long. Like it has to be like I started reading devotionals. I can pull like 3 of them right off my desk right in front of me, like, and listening to pastors on podcasts, listening to podcasts like yourself, worship music. When I was first married, my wife would actually listen to worship music, and I would turn it off. Like I didn't want, what is this crap?
Yeah.
Turn it off and put on
Yeah.
country or whatever. And now it's come full circle. Like now I'm the one that wants to listen to worship music all the time, and she's the one that wants to listen to like oldies and stuff like that. So it's just funny how that works. But I guess my point of that is that that was my faith story, and I tell people this all the time. Jesus didn't die so we can have a religion. He died so we can have a relationship with our Creator. And any church or anything that doesn't help you get closer to that, go find one that does.
Right.
That's
Right.
really all
So
that
it
God
seemed
wants,
like
a relationship.
you didn't really grasp that concept, what you're talking about right now, until after you went through that difficult situation with your job. How long were you out of a job?
That was about 6 months. And I just took on
Scary.
like odd jobs. And really, I didn't have enough savings. And like I took on odd jobs, and I would do kitchens and bathrooms. I had been renovating and flipping houses for a long time. So I had the tools, I had the knowledge. So that's what I did to put food on the table. It was very humbling, right? To go to people and ask for help and say, hey, do you know anybody that I could, do some work for? Like, I don't, I can't. And even when I did replace my income with another sales job, it was half of what I was making before. It was
Right.
it was a very humbling experience, and it just took a very long time to necessarily climb out of that. But it all, you look back on it, and you always back on your life, and you'll see God's plan. He gives you 20/20 vision once, from the present day, looking back.
Yeah.
It's moving forward. It's looking forward, and right now that He wants us to have faith, in
Yeah.
what He's doing.
So you had to, so that's when you kind of really developed the relationship and started developing your faith when you went through that transition. Did it teach you how to lean on Him instead of your own strength, to lean on God and trust in Him that He's going to come through and He's going to provide? Um, how did that happen? Did you finally get a job after the 6 month mark, or what happened after that?
Yeah, I did. I eventually got another job. Again, it was half the income I was making previously, but yeah, I think that for me, it's a continuing relationship. So it's constantly learning how God works in your life, and constantly developing that faith and developing the trust in that he's gonna take care of us.
Yeah.
There was a time recently in the last when I transitioned to real estate and I was purchasing the 54 unit complex, which I had gone from a couple single family homes to a 54 unit apartment complex, and that was a huge leap. And
Yeah.
it was very scary and it required a lot of faith. But I remember one time being not being able to sleep at night, all the worries and fears. What if I fail? What if this deal falls through? What if I lose all this money?
Yeah.
Um, and then I remember picturing Jesus at a poker table with me, and I have all these chips in front of me, and I just pushed the chips over to him, and I said, "I need you to take care of these because I don't know what to do with them anymore." And literally just giving it all to him. I needed a physical. We're visual creatures, so I needed this visual, and that really helped me. And then I just went right to sleep, and that trust eventually is what continues to get me through the hard times. Like I definitely, life ain't easy. Like there's happy moments, there's joyous moments, but I mean, if you live in this world, like it's gonna beat you up, and there's gonna be times where you just look up and like, really, like, and
Yeah.
so I'm still, learning how to do that, how to lean on him, how to, on a daily basis, on a regular basis,
Hmm.
how to give it over to him.
And so that gamble, or I guess it was scary. It was kind of like a gamble in a way. That worked out for you. That went through, and then you just kind of took off from there.
Yeah, it closed amazingly enough. I say that to people and they look at me funny, but I probably shouldn't own it. Like it had God's hand all over it. The way I look at it, it sounds, cheesy to a lot of people, but I really believe that it was a God thing. Like I really, how I found it, how I got it under contract, how I got it closed, like how I raised the money, all that stuff. Like you look at it and like so many things had to work at
Yeah.
just the pieces had to fall together at just the right places. And, it just, anyways, but yeah, it closed and I own it. And then I proceeded to have to, do that large of a renovation on it. I mean, the place was falling apart. I mean, we had like, I can't remember, like, raw sewage leaks, like, active sewage leaks in like four of the crawl spaces when we took it over. Like it was just
Mhm.
really a bad situation for the residents and for the buildings. They just been neglected for so long. So, we had to, give these people a better place to live, take care of them. And, it's been a transformational process for the buildings
Wow.
and for myself.
So the people were, I was envisioning an empty building, like 54 unit empty space, but it was actually, there were people in there. So that's even more pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 93% occupied when we took it
Wow.
over. Yeah. So we had to do all our renovations with them there, and we eventually, as people moved out, we would gobble up those apartments to renovate them. So I hovered around a 75%, um, vacancy or rate during the process of the renovations because I had so many of them that I was renovating. But we still cash flowed it to be 75% occupied during a renovation of that magnitude, and to cash flow the asset at the same time is actually kind of a significant feat. But
Yeah.
so that was amazing. And it's funny because I'm the guy that I'm the general partner. If for your listeners that don't have real estate, I'm a general partner. So it's structured where I'm what they call a syndicator. So I raise money. Most banks will put commercial financing on assets like this. So they'll finance like 70 or 80% of it. So the rest of the money has to come from somewhere. That's the down payment.
Right.
You can use your own money for the down payment, but if you don't have, millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can raise that money from other investors. And then
Right.
if they're not direct family gifting you money, then you have to file regulations with the SEC, and
Mm.
you know, there's all kinds of different exemptions you have to qualify for and all that stuff. But a reg D, an attorney, they handle all that stuff. I didn't mess with that. but
Right.
um, but the bottom line is, I had to raise the money for the down payment, from other people. And so there's a group of us that actually own this, and I'm the general partner, which means I manage it, and I'm the asset manager. I make the decisions, I make sure it runs, and I report financials to the banks, and I report to the investors and I write checks to the investors.
Mhm.
We've been able to cash flow it, and I've been able to write checks to the investors every quarter. I've never missed a quarter as far as, giving them return, some kind of a return. It's sometimes it's less than others, but that's been a significant, uh, feat in my mind. It was, it was amazing that kind of what I was getting at is there's been many a times where I've been afraid to open the financials because I knew how bad the property was operating and how much crap we had going on. I'm
Yeah.
just like afraid. I just procrastinated to open the financials and really calculate what I was able to pay the investors. And every time I've been surprised by like, and I know it sounds cheesy, but I feel like God has taken care of us. And every single time I've been able to, give the investors what I promised, which has been truly just amazing to me.
Amazing.
So
So when did you buy this property? Was it 2016?
no, this was actually 21,
Oh, 20, right after
2021. Yep.
COVID.
Yeah,
Wow.
it
And
was the year after COVID that we finally
Mhm.
closed. COVID happened and that delayed our closing a little bit, but mainly it's just, the owner had owned it for 30 years and he just he wasn't really ready to sell and was and owners when they own something for that long, they think it's worth more than it is. They really do.
Okay. Yeah.
They don't touch any. He didn't put any money in the property in 30 years and still thinks it's worth like market value. So
Yeah.
we had to go through a lot of negotiations, and really at the end of the day, I had to overpay for it, to get it. But these kind of assets, apartments, they really don't sell. You don't see them. You don't see a for sale sign in front of an apartment complex ever. And there's a
Hmm.
reason for it because most wealthy people are looking for safe places to put their money,
Hmm.
and real estate is one of the safest places to put your money. I read a stat the other day, and it was like 90% of the millionaires in the world have done so through real estate. But
Hmm.
it's not
Wow.
even just that becoming a millionaire. It's where people will preserve their financial wealth,
Right.
and so they trade off market. They brokers, pocket
Call people.
listings. Yep, and then or you just approach owners like I did is what I did, and they agreed to sell to me, and that's
Right. Oh, so you found this guy through just calling somebody through word of mouth, nothing that was advertised, right?
yeah. Well, I had flipped the house across the street. This is kind of a funny story, and then I saw this traffic. Our apartments are like set behind mansions. It's the typical house flipping 101. You buy the worst house in the best neighborhood. So I bought this house. It was mansions across the street, and then there was like traffic going in, and I was just curious. So finally, I drove back there, and there's this apartment complex. And at the time, I was, researching and learning how to do this.
Uh-huh.
And when I saw this, it was like textbook. They always said you look for like rundown buildings that it looks like someone doesn't want to own it, right?
Mm.
And so that's what it was. It was just paint peeling, porches falling off. And it was like a God moment for me. I was like, holy crap, I'm going to buy this place. Like, I don't know why or how or when, but I'm going to buy this place, right?
Mm.
And so then I flipped the house. I finished the house across the street, and it was around my wife's birthday. It was October, late October, and she wanted to go out to eat for her birthday. She chose Jackson. I don't know why. Normally we'd go to Ann Arbor, where all the good restaurants
Yeah.
are, but we went not anything against Jackson, but they just don't have as much of a selection, right?
Hmm.
So she wanted to go to Jackson. She wanted to go to this particular Japanese steakhouse. It's like an hour wait. It was pre-COVID. And I was like, well, it's your birthday. We'll wait an hour if you want to wait an hour. No, I don't want to wait. Okay, let's go to Knights. And Knights was another steakhouse. And again, Friday night, full place, 15-minute wait, better wait. Let's have a drink at the bar. The bar's full, two stools, one big guy in the middle, two empty stools, whole bar. And so I said, well, hon, just sit down. I'll stand behind you, and then you can order a drink. And the big guy at the bar, in the middle stool, he's overheard us. So I'll move over. So he moves over. He's wearing a suit, drinking whiskey. I was like, thanks. What do you do? And he's like, I'm a broker. I'm a real estate broker. I was like, oh man, like I flip houses and I want to buy this apartment. He's like, I know those owners. They'll never sell. I've been trying to buy that complex for 10 years. They never even give us a price. They like broke my heart, and I'm like, oh man, like really? So I didn't give up though. I convinced them to have breakfast with me 2 weeks later, and then I convinced them to try it one more time my way. We were gonna draft a purchase agreement,
Hmm.
actual contract send it to them, have a lawyer draft it. We did that, and for the first time in ever, they countered with a price.
Wow.
So he just fell out of his chair. He's like, I can't believe it. They gave us a price. So like it was like twice what we offered him, but still we were under contract. Off to the races. So that's when the fun began, and after inspections and diligence and all that stuff, you find all these problems with the buildings and stuff, and you try to trade and try to get money off the price, and I got some, but ultimately when I closed, it was one of those things where I had to renovate the place from top to bottom from inside and out.
That's how bad it was. So the guy became your partner.
The broker is really, the broker brokered the deal, and he knew the owners, and then the owners, it was kind of like if you buy a single family house from a realtor.
Yeah.
The realtor, is the seller's agent.
Right.
And, though in a commercial transaction, typically the broker is the seller's and the buyer's agent. So they're brokering the whole entire deal on both sides. So that's who we used. And then, when you do something like this, you have to have a whole team of people. I had to have a banker, a commercial, relationship. I had to have two different lawyers. I had to have, various inspectors. I had to have an insurance guy. I had to have, just a whole team of people that helped us. And that's the thing. Everyone thinks it sounds so scary. It does require a lot of faith, and it does require risk, but it's not as much as you think, because you have so many people looking at this from a bank and a legal standpoint that it's really hard to screw it up all that bad.
Different angles. So many people from different angles.
Right. The banks will raise their hand and say, no, these numbers don't work. You can't buy this, or we won't loan you money on this because it's just not a good investment for us. So really, even if you botch it up and you miss a bunch of stuff, there's people that'll catch it. Not everything, of course. There's things the lawyers missed. There's things everybody missed in this deal. I was shocked, actually. Later on down the road, and I missed it myself. They had sent us the wrong rent roll, which is kind of a funny thing. The rent roll is the listing of all the tenants and what they've paid, what they've prepaid. Well, what they've prepaid is the key. If they prepay a lot, then that's the money the owner has to give you at closing. But the owner had sent us the previous year's rent roll, which didn't show a lot of prepayments, though the most recent one was more favorable. It could have went either way, but in this particular case, the older rent roll was less favorable to me and more favorable to him.
Right.
I never found out if that was intentional or malicious. I just kind of chucked it up as a loss. We lost that money, and we're just going to move on. It was a year later when I found it. I could go back to him and try to sue him, but I always try to look at things like, sometimes you just have to say that, is it worth the fight? Set your ego aside. You were wrong. He was wrong. You were right, whatever. And you just either work it out with someone or just show them grace and mercy.
Right.
And say, you know what? I'm not even going to make that phone call. I'm just going to chuck up the losses. We're going to take it, and we're going to move on with our lives.
Yeah.
So that's the way I've found that it's the Christian way to do things. Now, you don't become a pushover, and you don't let people walk all over you, and you certainly don't, overlook things that you should be paying attention to. But when something happens or someone makes a mistake, you show them grace, and you try to show them mercy if it's possible.
Right. And yeah, I'm sure you prayed over that, and that's what you decided to do. And it looks like it turned out well. I mean, it took a lot of courage. I feel like you were starting from scratch, and taking that big leap required a lot of faith. You trusting that God was in this with you. Now, is your goal to continue? Have you moved on to purchase other buildings? Do you plan to continue to do that?
Good question. I am under contract with a 44 unit that's in Big Rapids currently. That's my first deal. I always thought that the deal would come quickly, and a lot of the groups, I joined some groups, some mastermind groups, and a lot of them always said that once you close your first big deal like that, the next one will come really quickly. And it didn't for me. It didn't. So that's one thing that I was really surprised about, and I think that's God's timing. Like, our timing is not God's timing. And so I could have forced it. I could have bought a lot of different buildings in the last
Yeah.
2 years, but I didn't want to buy the wrong thing. I didn't want to overpay. I didn't want to risk investors' money. I looked at a
Hmm.
lot of them, but I made a lot of offers, but I would offer them what I could make work that wouldn't
Yeah.
put me at risk or my investors at risk.
Yes.
So all my offers got rejected, until now. And even now I'm overpaying, but we have a different value add, strategy for this one that'll make it profitable for everybody, and that
Right.
we're not as much a risk if we were just operating it, quid pro quo.
Right.
So
So it looks like you decided to just kind of take it easy and let God, the Holy Spirit, guide you instead of like, pushing through and making this happen of your own strength again.
yeah, like it's that and running a $2.3 million renovation on a 54-unit apartment complex by yourself, acting as the GC
Mm.
and the asset manager and the project manager.
Yeah.
It required a lot more than I expected.
Yeah.
So that was, like, yeah, I mean, some of these other guys that do this, they have like teams of people. And what that does is it waters it down for everybody. So I really
Mm.
didn't want that for my investors or for me.
Hmm.
And so I chose, and plus it was a great learning experience, great hands-on, like, it just, there was a lot of benefits to doing it that way. Now, will I do it this way forever? Will I buy another property like that? I don't know.
Mm.
Probably not with those same conditions, um, but it was certainly very good. And you touched on something that I wanted to point out for your listeners, that in life you're not going to have a time when you're pursuing the calling that's got put on your heart without being fearful. Like,
Mm.
you're going to have to do it afraid. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. That's just, Jesus calls us to go out and be bold
Mhm.
in our faith, in our lives, taking risks. Jesus didn't play it safe. He wasn't safe about what he said to people, he professed boldly what the beliefs were and the way we should live our lives. And when you go and God puts something on your heart, and it's whatever it is, it's a dream, it's a calling, you're inspired to do something, right? But it's too scary. Like, the devil gets in your ear and says, nah, that's too risky.
Yeah.
Just continue going to work. Just keep going to work. Like, there's nothing wrong with a W-2 job. I'm not knocking people that just go to work. And, my dad was a truck driver his whole life, has beautiful houses, has a, wonderful life. Um, but I'm saying that you don't want to look back on your life and say, what if I would have done this? You don't want to have that regret saying, I had this calling and I just ignored it because I was afraid, right?
Yeah.
Or even worse, you meet your maker and your maker says, welcome home. You can get into heaven, but why didn't you do these things I put on your heart? I'm just wondering, why didn't you, there was so much potential for you, right?
Mhm.
Try to see yourself the way God sees you. And then, you know, get used to being uncomfortable and get used to doing things afraid.
Yeah. Knowing that God has your back,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And don't live in fear. I mean, that's different. Living in fear is different than taking action in the face of fear. Two different things. When you live in fear, you are letting the devil win. When you take
Mhm.
action in the face of fear, that's courage. And that's the way Christ calls us to live, I believe.
Absolutely. That's the way. And so, the premise behind this podcast is um, we've always been told as Christians to not mix our faith and our business, or not mix religion with business. And then that's, what society tells everyone, don't mix religion with business.
Absolutely.
Because, you're probably going to offend somebody. You're probably going to look stupid and maybe not that smart. And, faith is something you keep in your house. You don't bring that stuff to work. And we've been really good at complying, especially Christians. We've been really good at complying with
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, but my question to you is, do you think that that is the approach that we Christians should take? Do you believe we should keep our faith separate from our work, from our business? Do you believe that, or do you not believe that? What do you think about it?
Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, like, when Christ was walking the face of the earth, when you read those red letters in the gospel,
Mhm.
What was he doing? Right? Like was he worrying about, getting fired from a job, or whether or not someone was going to buy his carpentry? He wasn't worried about those things. Was he worrying about offending someone? I think if you read the Gospels, I think you'll find out pretty quickly that he wasn't. I just feel like he gave us instructions. He said, "Follow me." He said, "Do this, and you will have this. You'll have an abundant life. You'll have prosperity. You'll you'll have the life that you know that I promise you." And in this world today, it's tough, like, because the world. I mean, really, that's a whole other thing. But we've been instructed, hey, to be in this world, not of this world. The world will try to pull you in, and it's difficult to not become of the world.
Right.
Very difficult. And I think that if you're afraid of offending someone, or losing a job, or losing a contract, or losing money because of your faith or your Christianity, I think you're probably missing it. For me, I try to find ways. Now, you got to do the other thing is, there's a lot of Christians out there, and I like Joyce Meyer, and she talks about this all the time. She said Christians are some of the meanest people on the planet. And that's not good. Like, don't put the fish on your car and then cut someone off in traffic. Don't wear the rhinestone Jesus and then be rude to someone at the grocery store. Like,
Right.
try not to do those things. We're not perfect, but, like, we got to show love to everybody. And you don't have to preach Jesus or preach the gospel to some strangers that are, that they're worldly people, and that, you might offend them, or that you might seem hokey if you just start preaching Jesus. Don't do that. Like, just love on them. Be the shining example of God's love and Jesus' love. And they'll want to be like you, or they'll want whatever you have going on so badly that they'll eventually ask. Like, what's
Right.
what's so they'll at least wonder, like, what's so different about Francine? She's always got joy. She's successful, got her own business. Like, what is up with this woman? And they're gonna want to know more about you. And that, to me, that's what Jesus wants. He doesn't want us to shove this stuff down anyone's throat. He wants us to love on people, and then share that.
Right.
Share his love and his word, and what he said with other people that are
Right.
walking
Because our
around.
job is to share it, is not to convince anybody.
Yep.
Right.
He
Where
came here to
God.
save people. He didn't
Right.
come here to save us physically. I think that's where a lot of Christians miss it. I'm not knocking Christians for the way they pray, and people get scared and they lose a loved one, or the loved one gets sick. Please pray for healing, and for my loved one that's sick. Whatever it is. I agree, like, we'll always pray for someone, but what about their soul? Do
Right.
you know where they're going when they die? Like, we're praying for their body, but what
Yeah.
about their soul?
For
What
sure.
wouldn't a better prayer to be like, please pray for my dad, that you get closer to him, that you
Mhm.
use people around him to know you? Like, that's a prayer that I pray for my family. I want them to know Christ, and I want them to have an intimate relationship with him.
Right.
And the body and the body and the soul, or and the spirit, are three different things. But certainly Jesus, when if you really watch carefully, it's funny because he didn't really care a lot about stuff. I mean, he didn't care much of anything about stuff, but he also didn't, like, put a lot of emphasis on the body, the physical flesh.
Mhm.
He was saddened when people were lost, but he wasn't. If you pay close attention, he wasn't sad for the loss of that flesh, of that person. He was
Right.
sad for the people that were still there.
Yes.
And so, also, there was wars, there was famines, there was mass murders. Those things saddened and angered him, but he didn't focus on them. And he didn't try to correct those things. He just moved on. Come on, let's go. Let the dead bury the dead. We've got work to do. We got to save people. We got to save their spirit.
Hmm.
Eternity was the only thing he cared about, and his father was the only thing he cared about. And that's what he preached all the time here.
Right.
So if we really, pay attention to that, and we care about the people that are around us, if there's an atheist you run across and you don't try to share something with him, like, eventually that's going to be like, do you really care about that person? Do you really love him? Do you really want to save him? If
Yeah.
you're not willing to share that because you know that person's lost. They truly are lost. When they go,
Yeah.
they're going to go to some, whatever you believe, they're going to go somewhere and it ain't going to be good, you know? And so if you really do love a person and an atheist, think about this. If they finally come to Christ and they think about all those Christians that they knew and they're going to think to themselves, why in the world? Like, because they're going to know that salvation now, right? They're going to know that they're saved. And they're going to look back and say, why in the heck didn't
Tell me.
Jason's a Christian. He knows Jesus. Why didn't he share this with me? Like, he must not care about me because he just let me, like, he knew I was going to, die and
Yeah.
go to
Eventually.
wherever. And he didn't try to save me. So,
Jason was more concerned about his image and about not looking crazy.
right. Exactly. There you go.
All right. He was more concerned about himself. Oh, I'm saved. You're not saved. Sorry, guy, but I'm not going to be the one to look crazy or,
Well, it's going to require sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to require you to give some of your time or some of your effort or maybe some money, whatever
Lose
it
faith.
is. Time, treasure,
faith.
talents. Yeah, like it's going to cost you something, but if it doesn't cost you anything, it's not worth doing. Like Jesus wants no part of that if it doesn't cost you something. So it's not about earning your way either. I think that's a lot of faith. Well, pretty much every religion on this planet is based on earning and punishment.
That's where
earn
the
your way and
Catholic,
you
that
get
was the
punishment.
Catholic too, and it was based on works, wasn't it?
100%. 100%. And so we have to understand that, as Christians, we cannot earn our way to heaven. That work has already been done. Christ did that work. All we have to do is receive that gift. That is a gift. And then everyone's like, well, you can't just continue to sin. Again, it's if you live in sin, if you're living a sinful life, that's different than sinning. Sinning and falling from grace and repenting and saying, I screwed up, please forgive me. That's a heart thing. Jesus knows your heart. He always does. It's just like the Pharisees that were putting gold in the plate. Like Jesus knew their heart. He knew they were wealthy. The woman puts 2 coins in, it's all she has. It was truly from her heart. And he said she gave something more valuable than what they gave. So it's not about money and it's not about anything else. It's only about your heart. So
It's about your heart, right? Because when you are saved, you are trying, if your heart is truly in the right place, you are really working on improving and changing yourself and getting away from the sins. And when you do slip again, because we are probably going to slip again. I mean, we're humans. You need to repent right away and work on being better next time. It's not just about, oh, now I'm saved. Now I can go back to what I was doing, business as usual. It doesn't matter because I've already been saved, because once saved, always saved. Well, I beg to differ with that. I feel like you can be saved, but then you can kind of forfeit your salvation by having your heart in the wrong place, because the only one who knows if your heart is truly in it is God, and you're not going to be able to fool him, right?
yeah.
So
It's a relationship that has to be. It's kind of like if I go on a business trip and I come home and I tell my wife and she's like, "How's your business trip?" And I was like, "Oh, it's pretty good. I was mostly faithful." Right? I mean, is that going to be acceptable to her?
no.
So I think we just have to know that it's not a one and done. He didn't die on the cross and then just, okay, good, you guys can just go do whatever you want now. Like, no, that's not it. He died so that we could see the example and we could live the life that he demonstrated. He came down and said, okay, you guys are a mess. Like, here, let me show you how this is done, right?
Yeah.
This is how it's done. And so we're never going to meet that standard because we're not perfect. He was absolutely perfect. The only human in the history of the world that's was ever completely sinless. So we're never going to meet that standard. But he knew that, right? He completely knew that. And so we just have to have that relationship with him. And I think a lot of people talk about controversial things like the LGBTQ community and all that stuff. And that's a hard thing that churches are navigating. But the biggest thing for Christians that are listening is that your job is not to change those people. Your job is to love those people. and your job is to introduce them to a relationship with Christ. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of people, there's books out there, there's people of that community that have given up that lifestyle because they fell in love with Christ. They developed a relationship with Christ, and they realized that this isn't the lifestyle that he wanted for us, that he wanted for
Right.
me. So they give up that lifestyle. And my point of that is that the more you learn about Christ, the more the stronger your relationship gets with him. I feel like the more his qualities become a part of you, and the more you just want to do things his way.
Right.
You just want
And
to naturally. It's not even forced.
that's a tough one
Yeah.
because a lot of people say, being gay is something that they are born with. Because I was in the very secular, and grew up around a lot of gay people, I was of that mind that you are born that way. You really can't help it. But what people don't understand is that it is a spiritual matter. It truly is. It's a spiritual matter more than you think you were born that way. And that's why so many of us, and it's not that we are be hate people who are in that lifestyle. No, it's we hate the sin just like any other sin.
Right.
Homosexuality is no more of a sin than pornography, than being an alcoholic. They are all
Correct.
sin.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. And the problem with, a lot of Christians is when the, people of those communities walk in through a church door, then they're immediately judged. And that's not our place. God never gave us the authority for vengeance or judgment. We don't have
Right.
it. So it's not ours. So when you pass
Exactly.
judgment on another human being, on their lifestyle or whatever it is, yeah, trust me, all sin is the same in God's eyes. Whatever
all
you
the
look
same.
at on the internet, you take in a little bit, the way you run your business, oh, that's okay. That's just the way it's done. It ain't the way it's done. That ain't the way Christ views it. So you are the same in his eyes. So I agree with you 100%. That's the problem, or the challenge that churches are running into right now with everything that's going on. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, the world wants to take God out of everything, and the world wants to
We
convince.
have almost.
Yeah, the world wants to convince all the people of those communities that, oh yeah, they're judging you, they're bad. Look at them, those hypocrites.
Yeah.
And so that they want to squash down the Christianity. They want to take Jesus and God out of everything as much as possible and make us the bad guy. When good is viewed as evil, and when evil is viewed as good, then we are, end of times. Those are end of times type stuff. And I don't want to go there. That's a whole nother podcast.
It's all in the Bible, though.
Yeah, it's all in the Bible. That's right. So
It's all in the Bible. But so, what do you think about as a business person in the marketplace, in the business world? Is it okay should we Christians be openly professing our faith? That doesn't mean telling people what to do, but spreading the gospel, not hiding the fact that we're Christians, speaking about our testimonies.
yeah,
Should we be doing that? Because I've, spoken to a lot of Christians, and many of them who don't feel like because their client base are not Christians, that they shouldn't openly profess it, that that's something they can do in the background, but that's something that is probably not, they just don't do it because they don't feel like
right.
it's good for their business. Do you think that if you really do have your heart in the right place, you wouldn't have a problem with professing it? How do you feel? How do you do it? Do you do it at all? What do you feel?
Yeah, I do it. I wear a cross around my neck, and I have a cross on my car. I look to do business with other Christians. I don't advertise that, or but God will move people in your lives that it's just kind of funny. Maybe it's because they see the cross and they bring up the fact that they're Christians. They bring it up. I didn't ask.
Right.
Like they just started talking to me about. I mean, I've had contractors in the parking lot talk to me about their past porn addictions and how they were saved and how their marriage is saved and all this, like really intense conversations, to tears in a parking lot with a contractor that I just met like 10 minutes ago.
But saw the cross and they said, "Oh, this is a safe place."
Maybe it was. I don't know. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who wear crosses, so and a lot of people that do
Yeah.
bad stuff that wear crosses. But like,
Yeah.
I just think that God will use people. He'll use you. Whatever it is, you got to leave it up to Him. And for people to say, "Well, I don't share that because my clients," I think that's, God. If you're a Christian that is not, like I said, don't hijack the Christian faith to promote your business. There's people doing that stuff too.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
don't do
Using
that.
Jesus for their business instead of their business for Jesus.
Yeah, but like, don't force your religion down anybody's throat. And like,
Right.
if you're, say you're whatever, and you got you got some Jewish clients, like, they don't believe in Christ, so don't start talking about Jesus. Like
Yeah.
that's not going to do anybody any good. It's just making people angry is not is not a strategy. Now,
Exactly.
Jesus made people angry, but only because he knew they were hypocrites and they were doing really bad stuff. So, he called them out on their BS. But like, don't try to save someone by making them angry. Just try to love on them and look for a little opportunity. You don't have, like, whatever. Like, for example, hey, I can't jump on that call because I'll be in church, or I'll call. It's Sunday, and I believe Sunday's for God and family, so I'll call you Monday morning. Like, just little things you can interject that they really don't have to say a word about. It's not doing anything for, and it'll get them start to think, like, what
Yeah.
kind of church does he go to? Like, what, like, and they'll ask questions, and I've had people do that too.
Yeah.
I say something to people, I say better than I deserve, and I jumped on a call like this, and the first thing the guy asked me was like, "Oh, so what's that mean? Unpack that for me." And then I immediately started talking about salvation in Christ. And I said, "Are you a Christian?" And he says, "I'm Jewish." I'm like, "Oh." Like, whoops. I kind of open mouth, insert foot, like, but you know what? It opened up a dialogue, and I
But
shared
he asked first, so it's not like
right. But it opened up a really cool dialogue, and I ended up sharing a lot of things with them. And I mean, I started following Barry McGuire lately, and he's like the car guy, the car wax guy, McGuire's Wax.
Uh-huh.
Really, really huge disciple maker, like, big time. Anyways, he says, it's a team sport. Don't try to save someone right there. Like, just plant a little seed and let them move on. Let God use the next person and the next person and the next person. And I just love that analogy. Like, it's a team sport. It takes the pressure off you. You don't have to do it. Like, just love the person, move on.
Seeds. Yeah.
Like, a couple things I like to do. I like to, pay it forward on drive-throughs. I like to just pay for someone's meal behind me. No strings, no question. I'm an anonymous. I do have a cross in my car. I want them to see that cross. But other than that, like, they don't know who I am. If I see people begging on the side of the road, people pass judgment on these people. Say, "Oh, they make 60 grand a year begging and they don't need the money." Like, okay, that's cool. But you know what? If they got to lie and stand on the side of the road in the cold to get money, like, they need help. They're lost for sure. And so, like, love on them. I give them a 20. I don't just give them spare change. I give them a 20 now, or even more sometimes. And I'll give them a little scripture verse, or I'll share a card with them, like, that says that has a QR code on it that they can go and they can learn more. Like, don't be the Christian that looks like pardon my French, a cheap ass. Like, be generous.
I heard that about somebody who works in the restaurant business. That servers, it's well known among people who work in this restaurant business that Christians are the worst tippers.
Oh, and that breaks my heart. And I mean, how much does that break Jesus' heart? Right? Like, that is, I'm not that guy. I'm definitely not that guy, and I don't want to be that guy ever. Be generous. Be that Christian that when they think about Christians, they think about, wow, that guy was generous. Like, I want what that guy has. Why is that guy so generous? Why does he give stuff away so freely? Why doesn't things bother him like that? Don't attach yourself to money. Like, Francine, I'm sharing. We're unpacking a lot here. There's a lot. You could almost, like, on each of these little things, you can almost do a whole, like, week, a week of Sundays. But, like, the money's not yours. If you look at the money as yours, then you're looking at it the wrong way. It's all God's. Everything He gave you. And, like, I'll dive a little bit deep on this. But say you're a builder and you build houses. Where did those 2x4s come from? I
From the
mean,
tree.
I bought those 2x4s with my money. Yeah, but where did they come from? They came from a tree. Where did the tree come from? Tree grew out of a seed with soil and oxygen and sun. Those are all things provided. Those are gifts from God. So
Yeah.
like everything comes from Him. All your talents. I did that. Well, where'd you get your brain? Where'd you get your hands? Where you were created, right? Who created you that allowed you to make that money, to use your brain and your hands to make that money,
Yeah.
right? Like if you really dive into it, like it's all His. So detach yourself from that,
Right.
and just use, as Joyce Meyer says, use money to help people instead of using people to get money.
A total mindset shift, right?
Totally. And there's a lot of Christians out there. Like I heard this staggering statistic that 80% of Christians don't even give. Nothing. Zero. Only 20% of them give. And the 20% that give only give an average of 2%. And that blows my mind. It really does.
Wow.
It just shows you where their mindset is, right?
Well, but then I heard that only 6% of Christians read the Bible at all. So maybe that's why,
Sure.
because when you are not in the Word, how do you practice Christianity? How do you follow Christ if you don't read the Bible?
Yeah. Great question.
That's where everything else stems from. I think we've had a problem with biblical illiteracy. I realized that from myself, having been thought for so many years that I was a Christian and realizing that no, I wasn't. And it's because I was completely biblically illiterate, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. When you read the word, it gives you, and that's another thing, it gives you discernment. And a lot of people, that's a big word. And for non-Christians or non-believers, that's going to be something like, what the heck is that? And they'll look it up. But discernment is really all it is as you read the Bible, as you learn and get to know Christ and have a relationship, and you learn more about the truth. The truth is the word. You get discernment over all the other. It just basically it's like this. It's like a BS meter. All it
Yeah.
is a BS meter, and your BS meter gets better the more you learn, the more you dive into that scripture. And so when the world says something, you're like, yeah, but I don't think that's true.
It's not in the Bible. But the problem is a lot of people start reading and don't understand it. That was my biggest hurdle for the longest. And the thing is that it's one of those things that the more you read it, the more you have to ask God for understanding. And the
Right.
more you read it, the more you're going to understand. But initially, if you just open the Bible and start reading Genesis, it's pretty hard. I will admit,
It's
but
really
you have
hard.
to keep on going.
That's really hard. I think that, and I tell people this all the time. They're like, oh, where, a non-Christian or someone that doesn't read the Bible, they say, where should I start? I tell them, don't read the Bible. I know that's crazy to say, but I tell them, go find somebody that has studied the Bible their entire lives, a pastor, somebody you like to listen to. Joyce, I turn them on to Joyce Meyer. Even Joel Osteen. I know he's like, a lot of people knock him, but he's a really good pick-me-upper, and it gets people, he saves a lot of people by getting them interested. And then they dive in, and then they go to a different church or whatever, and they learn, actual scripture. But and then you turn go get a devotional where someone takes one scripture verse and then writes two
Breaks it
paragraphs about it and ties it into how this applies to your life. Don't just open up a King James version and start reading Genesis. I mean, that's just nobody. I won't even do that.
People get discouraged if they are brand new.
Right.
But I think they do have to start diving in there because
Yeah.
you can't do spiritual fast food forever. Like you can't be on devotionals, you can't be watching videos. You have to dive into
Yes.
that. And I'll tell you that that's why I was stagnated for 2.5 years.
Okay.
It's the fact that I didn't want to dive into it because I didn't like it. I was like so confusing to me. I didn't understand what I was reading. And then when I finally forced myself and kept on going things just started to happen. So yeah, initially I would say fine, but it's something that you're going to have to do because if you don't,
Yeah.
then that's where you can be led astray.
Sure. I agree with that. And yeah, but the problem is that, they have to start somewhere, and if they get turned off and they just close the book and put it away and just go,
That's what happened to me, yeah.
That's what happens. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to avoid with people that say, where should I start? But they can start if they really want to, the gospel, start with Matthew, start with John. Like those are great places to start.
Yes.
But I also turn people onto the Bible app. And like that way it has a little play button, and I've shown people
Yeah.
this. You can actually play it and it'll read it to you, like in your
Yes.
car. And the voice that they use, I don't know who they hired for that voice, but he sounds like God. He's like, and then there was light. Like,
Yeah. The
it's really
Bible
good. It's
app.
like, wow, this is, you can just listen to the gospel while you're driving to your next stop, or while you're commuting to work,
Yeah.
or taking your kids to soccer practice, you know?
That's a good entry point. Making
Yeah.
finding it, I guess a easier way to ease into it.
Hmm.
A way to ease into it because it is kind of rough. I tried opening, and when they started, with like so and so begat, I was
Hmm.
like, what? I follow this,
That's,
it's
yeah, that's the version also, I wish people would, get into the right version, but there's so many King James versions
oh
floating around, every nightstand, every, whatever. And so I think that's where a lot of people get lost, or just, get turned off by it.
mhm.
Aside from the mean Christian that they just cut them off in traffic, and then they try to read this crazy old, book that is written in a language no one even understands anymore. So it's like,
Yeah,
it's really hard, but once it gets a hold of you, Jesus will continue to seek you, and he won't ever stop. And you can
correct.
continue to ignore him for your whole life. And I had a group of kids young guys working for me, and they were talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, I was there, like I was in college, I get it. But I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you something. You will know the truth eventually. Someday, you're going to know the truth. Now, when that is, you get to determine that. And hopefully it's sooner than later. My wish for you is that it's sooner. And that's all I left them with. Because
Mhm.
every time I'd say something, they would kind of just, right? I mean, they're 18, they know everything. And I was there
Planting
once
those
too.
seeds.
And
That's the toughest age, though. I
yeah.
have a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old, and I have to pray to God that He send the right person that has influence over them because I didn't bring them up as Christians. So when you miss that window, but they're not going to listen to me. You know what I'm saying? So, at that age, it's the toughest. But you just have to pray so that the right people come along with their influence,
Yeah. And try to
And that's
bring
what I
people.
see
Yeah.
with a lot of the younger guys who are digitally evangelizing
Hmm.
people,
Right.
digital pastors, online content,
Yep.
kingdom content. That is a good way to access the younger people for sure.
Well, that's you got to meet them where they're at, right? And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of programs that are out there now for kids your age, and I have young kids, so I'm concerned about that too. I've been blessed. My son, with our church, he's really kind of plugged into it, and
Hmm.
he about a month ago he was baptized, and that was his choice. He chose to be baptized, and he that was a huge step, and we made a big deal out of it, and I couldn't be prouder of him.
How old is he now?
12.
12.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And you have a daughter too, right?
Two daughters, 11 and 8.
11
Mhm.
and 8. So they're still in an age where you can kind of guide them. But boy, once they hit that 16, good luck with that.
Yeah.
It's hard.
I'm kind of dreading that, but I don't like, I look at it, Francine, and you might look at it differently, but as a Christian, I learned early on as I developed that relationship that they're not mine either. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of people, that Western culture is like, they treat their kids like as possessions, and if their kid
Personal
like
property. Yeah.
doesn't like do well, then they're not doing well, and if their kid's a failure, they're a failure. And like, no, that's not it at all. Like, your only job as a parent, I mean, your job is to give them a shelter and food and all that stuff, but your job is not to give them a BMW and an Ivy League education
Mhm.
and a $1,500 cell phone. That's not your job. Your
Mhm.
job is so they know who their creator is and they have a relationship with that creator. They are not your possession. They are not even yours. They are God's children that you've been given the privilege of raising.
Yes.
And that's the 100% truth. If you change your mindset to that, a lot of the parents these days would take a lot of pressure off. Like,
Would take a lot of pressure off
yeah,
of us. Yes.
it
Yes,
really
for
is.
sure.
But that's really your only job. I mean, they're going to find their own way. You could do everything right, and your kid could still wind up a complete screw up. You could do everything wrong, and your kid could wind up the president of the United States. I don't know, but the point is that it's not on you, and that's really where I think a lot of people miss it. Your job is to make sure they have that relationship with Christ and make sure they know Him and when that happens, everything will fall into place. They will have the
Absolutely.
calling. They'll work hard. They'll be honest. They'll want to follow him naturally because they have a relationship and they realize they're unconditionally loved
That's the
by a
priority.
heavenly Father. You know, not
Yeah.
not I'm an earthly father, and I can only love them so much, and they know that, and they know that I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to fall, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness, and I do on a regular basis.
Correct.
But they know they have a heavenly Father that loves them more than me, and
Yeah.
that's what that's what's really important for them, is so they have that to fall back on. Because kids, it's scary for kids these days with everything that's going on. Like, I wouldn't want to be like their age right now, you know. Like, it's
I
pretty
know.
crazy, and to have that without having something to fall back on, like a relationship with Christ in this world, I really don't know where I'd be. I don't know about you, Francine, but I'm so glad that I found that.
I'm so glad too. I don't know where I'd be either. I don't know how I got this far without it, to be honest. I really don't. By the grace of God, I have no idea how I got this far. I'm like, wow, I can't
Yeah,
believe I made it this far without.
isn't that funny when you look back? Like, I should have been dead so many times, so
I
many
know, right?
times.
Like, I should have been dead so many times, yet here I am.
Yeah,
It's crazy, and that makes you appreciate it so much more and
right.
know that there is a purpose for your life,
Yeah.
right? Until the other day, I was thinking, what is the purpose of my life? I can't figure it out. I'm already this old and I don't know when am I ever going to find the purpose of my life? And the purpose for all of us is to glorify God. How you do it is different for everybody, depending on your skills, talents, abilities, what you do, etc. So,
Absolutely. Reach your potential. And I just heard something on, just it's funny you mentioned that, because I just heard a stat. I was listening to a podcast and they talked about dementia in elderly people. And they found this weird study that in every case, uh, if the person had a purpose, if they had a purpose in their life, it they did not like they just literally did not develop dementia, or it didn't develop until way later in their life, or just some weird stat like that. So the
really,
point is that having a purpose was the way to fight dementia
wow.
in elderly people.
So for us, it's to glorify God. So that's clear.
Right. And that's the first thing I thought of, was like, everybody's got a purpose. Like, I don't know why people need a purpose. They got it already. They just don't know it, right?
They don't know it. They don't know it. And that's why we spend all these years like, what is my purpose in life? When am I going to find out? And it's for everybody the same thing. I was stuck there forever. So, Jason, how can people find you if they want to know more about real estate, or if they want to know more about God? If they just want to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I love talking both of those topics, and I'm an open door, so anyone can call me. They can call my cell phone, 734-548-4091. A lot of people think I'm crazy for giving that on podcast, but I just really believe that, if a relationship is out there that exists, you can shoot me a text, or um, whatever, call me.
Uh,
Um,
mhm,
three nailscapital.com, and
mhm,
that's the letter, or the number three
mhm,
nails capital uh, .com, and
mhm.
also just J Valchine, my first initial and my last name, at three nailscapital.com.
Okay.
Is
Are
an
you
e-
active on any social media platform?
I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter, X. I'm not on Instagram yet. I've been thinking about, joining that club, but I've been kind of waiting in the shadows on that one. Um, but I am on LinkedIn. You can look me up, and the Valchine name is unique to United States, or maybe even the world. I don't know, but
Uh-huh.
there's no other Valchine family in the United States that I know of. They're all related to us somehow. But I'm the
Okay.
only Jason Valchine, so they can find
Okay.
me on
LinkedIn.
Facebook. It's easy to find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Hmm.
Okay, cool. So they can shoot you a message there on LinkedIn and you'll eventually get it on
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yep.
So Jason Valsheen on LinkedIn and Facebook, or his other information, which I don't think I'm going to write out in the notes. I'm going to let people, if they really want your phone number, they're going to have to listen to it.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
There's a little
So,
golden nugget at the end of the show. You got to listen to the whole
golden
show.
nugget. One funny thing is, I found that men or people who are strong Christians and really care about people, even if they are like highly successful, they seem to not hesitate with just giving their phone number to people. I'm just noticing a pattern with that. And I think that's just comes from a place of reassurance that God has your back, and anybody who's supposed to call you or needs to call you is just going to call it, is going to use that for the better. So,
Well, there's two things to that. For one, what are you hiding? Right? What have you got to hide? The
yeah.
second thing is, who are you screwing over to where you don't want people like having your number? Like what?
Hmm.
Eventually you're gonna screw someone over and they're gonna have you like
Hmm.
I don't understand that mindset.
Hmm.
It just looks really sketchy when someone doesn't give their cell phone. Like when I meet people in business and they're like, "Well, yeah, I don't give my cell phone out." Like, really? I'm just like it always gives me hesitation. But I
Right.
feel like for one, I'm an open book, and if someone needs something, I'm gonna try to help them. That's it. That's all there is to
Perfect.
it.
Perfect. So for real estate or anything related to Jesus, make sure to communicate or contact Jason Valchine. And for my listeners, thank you again for this has been an amazing episode. Actually, it's been one of our longer ones. Some of them have gone as long as 1 hour and a half. I think I only one, but Jason has been so generous with his time today. So, for all of you out there, if you are a Christian CEO or a Christian executive and you're seeking to authentically um, mix your faith and your business, we can help you by creating social content for the purpose of inspiring more people to Christ via digital platforms. You can communicate with me on LinkedIn, Francine Sinclair, or find me at hello@francineSinclair.com. That's my email, or my website, which is francineSinclair.com. I want to thank all of you for listening in again today. We'll be back on next Tuesday with another amazing guest. And thank you to Jason Valchine for spending some time with us and talking about our Lord Jesus Christ. Take care.
Thanks, Francine.
Bye,
It was a
everybody.
pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.